Hello, everyone. This is John Robinson from the Prevention Education Program, or PEP team at Child and Family Focus. I am here presenting part three of my interview with Julie Smith from David's New Day. Uh, as I mentioned in part one and part two, which I encourage you to go back and click the link in the description if you have not watched those. This interview took place a little while ago, so some of the information may have changed, and I encourage you to visit both our website, which I will have in the description, as well as David's New Day website, which I will have in the description. And basically, in part three, kind of what we touched on was some things like, things to look out for in a loved one for warning signs of substance use, as well as, the resources and services and connections that David's New Day provides and has. We also touched on some, generational differences between what we're seeing in today's youth versus, sort of what youth have experienced in the past when it comes to just going through school and facing challenges as well. Different pressures, whether it be life pressures, social pressures, academic pressures, anxiety, and all that stuff. Also, how the pandemic impacted, you know, youth and kids in terms of how they uh, are experiencing school and experiencing life and how they're socializing with each other as well. I hope you enjoy this. And without further ado, I present part three of my interview with Julie Smith of David's New Day. What kind of things does David's New Day do to kind of create awareness around those dynamics and help people find the warning signs for those types of things?
Sure. So we do a lot of events. So we're out as much as we can, saying who we are and what we do. Um, we've pulled in a lot of resources. So I'm on the board of the Council of Southeast Pennsylvania, and
Mm-hmm.
they're an amazing organization in that they have so many services under one roof.
Right.
They focus on adults and they focus on teens. They focus on prevention, education,
Mm-hmm.
advocacy, legislation. They have crisis support. They have peer meetings.
Mm-hmm.
They have community events there. They do so much in the way of helping people, regardless of where they are in their recovery. So if they're
Sure.
to it, if they're further down the road and they want to give back and help,
Mm-hmm.
people volunteer there. So I was thrilled to have found them through Google
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, because again, like I said, I just was somebody who lost somebody to addiction and didn't know where to turn and had no experience in this whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was thrilled to have found them because they really have so many layers to them.
Right.
And so we're so happy that when somebody comes to us, we're able to direct them to
Mm-hmm.
an organization that we truly trust.
Right. At any stage of the process too.
Any stage of the process, regardless if they're, again, an adult, a child, they have something that
Mm-hmm.
will be able to support them.
Sure. And what area I mean, you said Council of Southeastern Pennsylvania, but do you primarily serve Southeastern Pennsylvania? What's like your radius, I guess?
It's like the Philly 5 county area.
Philly five county area, which
Yeah.
would be like
Bucks, Chester,
Delco, Berks.
Delaware.
Okay.
Yep. So it's Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, Delaware, and Philadelphia.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And then in terms of like, just some when because we talked about a little bit, warning signs to look out for in a family. If someone thinks that a loved one might be suffering from addiction, what are some warning signs to look out for in terms of like, like if they're not really sure?
Sure. I would say, and I'm going to be, since I'm so much more aware with my kids,
Hmm.
cell phones. I mean, obviously, we're giving devices to children who are not yet mature enough to understand how to
Hmm.
use them.
Right, right.
So, I think definitely monitoring your children's behavior. So,
Okay.
and that's starting with preteen. So, I mean, monitoring, looking at their phone, understanding who their friend groups are, because you are who you surround yourself with,
Yeah.
really are. Uh,
Hmm.
and so my, like my younger brother, when David, when he he was popular, he was
Mhm.
athletic, he was into sports. And then, we started noticing that he was associating with individuals that um, were apart from that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that this is for actually my side job that I'm mentioning this from, but I'm a life coach as my side job, and one of the clients I work with is he's a he's in his last year of high school, and he's kind of been trying to find his identity a little bit. And the thing that that he and I agreed on kind of for his goal for this year, just generally, is have as much fun as possible without jeopardizing your future.
Okay.
And I think that that's a really, really good goal for kids to have, because I think kids feel so much pressure these days to like keep up with certain things, and they compare themselves to each other.
Yeah,
Um, and they try to fit in certain places, and nothing wrong with having a lot of fun, but like if you're jeopardizing your future, that's a real problem.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, that's what I said to my daughter, who's going to be 13 in October, just be yourself. She just started middle school, and,
Hmm.
it's opening her up to so many new people, potentially new experiences.
Hmm.
And, again, I am fortunate, and they have the advantage that, we did experience this as a family. So I have been very open with them as to how David passed.
Hmm.
um, just more in recent, over the past year or two, where they can understand it a bit better. But, that's definitely, there's more pressure. I see it. I see that, everybody wants to be perfect, that,
Hmm.
athletics are a full-time job now.
Yeah.
My daughter is an athlete, practice around the clock.
Hmm.
um, there's a definitely, obviously, pressure to succeed academically,
Hmm.
um, so there's a lot, and those pressures I've seen. Even, I'm going to say, COVID didn't make it any better. I think it made it much
Oh,
worse.
it absolutely did.
With anxiety, so many
Yeah.
of my daughter's friends experience anxiety, and I definitely experienced
Hmm.
anxiety as a child. But I mean, the pressures weren't nearly as what they
Right.
are today. And
Yeah.
um, it's a shame, because, I think anxiety is something that, you don't outgrow. You just find the tools to help yourself.
Yeah, I think that the way that I like to think of it sometimes is I've soured on the phrase "it gets better," and I've kind of grown more fond of the phrase "we get better,"
Yes.
because like life doesn't really get better or worse; it just kind of happens. Like
Mhm.
we just get better at dealing with it over
Yep.
time. Um, and I think that sometimes what happens with substance use, at least with a lot of the people that I've known who've dealt with it, um, both in a profession that I've known in the personal capacity and in the professional capacity. Um, that whole identity thing, that anxiety thing, a lot of it is, you know, trying to find their identity, and the substance of who they are is something they're uncomfortable with. So they replace it with a substance that numbs them to that, and that is kind like it's literally like substance use, like the substance that they're using replaces the substance of who they are, and we see them transform into something that we don't recognize.
Yes, 100%. And then, it's very true when they say that it kind of stunts your maturity.
Hmm.
So when you start taking it, you're not experiencing the world like you would,
Right.
um, somebody that's not. So you're not healthily dealing with, the pressures, and, your eyes aren't open to even the good in what you're
Yeah.
experiencing. So, I have a friend that has done a lot of work around recovery.
Hmm.
She always says you need to have the right tools in your tool belt, type thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you don't. You just don't. You don't have any coping
Hmm.
skills. You don't have those tools to help you get through life. Because again, like you said,
Right.
life doesn't care. It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
It continues, and it's up to you to find your best way to kind of make it out alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I think you're right about the aspect with COVID and the pandemic, the idea that a lot of kids, with young kids, what I'm noticing when I go into some of these schools and classrooms is that they didn't have the chance to socially develop, the really young kids,
Yes.
and so they're a lot of them are socially stunted. And then some of the older kids, like, middle school, high school age, they are having to re-socialize in a way, like they almost kind of their social muscles kind of atrophied in a
Yeah.
way that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then it's not any better that, once they're reacclimated back in school, you know, cell phones, all they
Right.
do is text and Snapchat, and there's no live interaction,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
and you can't escape. And I used when I was younger, like in high school, and the term cyberbullying first came out, I like scoffed and laughed at it, and I was so much on the wrong side of that part of history. Because like now that it's like a type of bullying that you can't escape. It's
Yeah.
always in your pocket. It's always there.
Yes. Yeah. I can't even imagine. So again, that goes back to my point of, monitoring
Hmm.
your children's activity.
Right.
But I would also say, if they're, and this sounds very, kind of canned response, but if they're losing pleasure or shying away from things that they used to do,
Hmm.
where my brother stopped playing sports,
Right.
that's no longer a value to him. Um, you know, uh, More kind of being more reclusive,
Hmm.
my parents, I remember them saying, he would be staying out later. They didn't know where
Hmm.
he was. Again, no cell phones back then. Um, so, just changes in behavior that are concerning that
Yeah.
you need to address.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna ask as a follow-up for that. Like, how do you know whether or not that might be the changes might be due to something concerning or due to substance use versus just someone evolving? Like what would you say how you can tell the difference might be?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I think it all comes back to just having open line of communication with your kids, which I'm,
Okay.
because you may not know. And I'm struggling with that. Again, have
Hmm.
almost 13-year-old who, she comes home from school. I'm like, how was your day? Good. So I'm struggling with trying to find a way to speak to these teenagers.
Right.
So it's not at all easy, but trying to find a way to establish that, and um, but with my brother, and again, that's the only experience I have growing
Hmm.
up. There was just a more sneaky component to it, you know,
Hmm.
um, and you eventually find things out,
Sure.
where he was getting in trouble. There were arrests, there were,
Hmm.
run-ins with the law.
Right.
You, if you're underage, your parents do find out about that.
Right. Yeah.
There were other parents that called my parents about David's behavior.
Hmm.
You know, there were some not so obvious signs, and then some, concrete evidence.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that I'm starting to notice is the idea that um when my parents were younger, my parents are like sort of right in that um right in between baby boomer and Gen X, you know. And so like when they were younger, it was kind of like go outside and play. Like people weren't super monitored and stuff. And even for me, like I babysat kids at age 13. Like
Yeah,
what am I gonna do if some intruder comes in like at age 13?
I
Like
did too. Yeah,
so there was that, but so the physical space was not as monitored, but
yeah,
now the physical space is so heavily monitored
yes.
by and that's there's I think some positives and some negatives to that, but the virtual space is the wild west. We're treating the virtual space now like we used to treat the physical space.
100%. That's a good, yes, you're right. You're right.
And
Yeah.
I think that we have to kind of have digital and virtual hygiene and monitoring similar to how we have, maybe not quite to like a total lockdown, but like and like But I think that needs to be a stronger conversation about like the same way we organize and monitor our physical space, we have to organize and monitor our digital space. And I think those conversations need to be had a little bit more.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the way that people communicate is through Snapchat and texting. And um you're right. It's because it's not right in front of our face. We think, oh,
Hmm.
everything's okay, you
Right.
know? I mean, I'm like, between you and I and the rest of the people listening to this,
Yeah.
I mean, I just took my daughter's cell phone 2 nights ago and I went through it.
Okay.
Thankfully I didn't find anything, but again, Snapchat, things disappear. So I only see on her phone,
Right.
she's saved. I do trust
Hmm.
her
Right.
at this point. I do trust her. So, what you can do is just, I think, continue to talk to your
Hmm.
kids about what's out there,
Hmm.
make sure they're, involved as much as they can be in school,
Sure.
um, you know, I think keeping kids busy and, having the right circle of friends is
Yeah.
really, really important.
I was going to say, if you don't mind me asking, and you don't have to answer this if it's too personal, but when you took your daughter's cell phone, do you tell her I'm going to go through your phone, or do you just go through her phone?
I just go through the phone.
Okay.
My husband and I have he has a different opinion. He feels like that's
Gotcha.
a violation.
Okay.
Um, I look at it as she's 12.
Okay.
Um, you know, I feel like it's still my right. Now, if
Gotcha.
she were a little bit older, if she was, 16, 17, I might feel a little bit differently,
Or paying her own phone bill.
paying her own phone bill. But I think the fact that she's still so young, I think
Hmm.
I think I'm okay. I think as she gets older, when she's in high school, it
Hmm.
will probably feel more of like a violation, and I'll probably say to her, I need to look, but that's only if I feel like I can't trust,
Hmm.
if the
Right.
trust has been severed in some way.
Okay. Yeah. I think that everyone is, like I said, I think we're kind of all still navigating this at the moment.
Yeah.
I think we haven't really, a lot of us really haven't figured out what the right answers are yet.
Yeah. It's hard. And I mean, I would never lie and say I didn't look at it.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
if she said to me, "Oh, I saw you went through my phone," which she has, I said, "Yes, I absolutely did."
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. We will have part four available for you very soon, as well as the full length interview as well. If you enjoyed that, which if you made it to the end here, you probably did, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps us in the algorithm and get the word out as well about our organization and all the different things we do. And we'll also keep you posted on future videos we try to post out there and also future conversations that we may have with people. Um, Also, if you had any thoughts on this conversations, please feel free to leave a comment below. We will have that. We really, really want to encourage dialogue around this. If there's something that really resonated with you, please feel free to comment on that. Even if there's something that you disagreed with and you want to voice your opinion, on that respectfully, please feel free to do that as well. And yeah, I look forward to presenting part four to you all, as well as the full length interview and future conversations as well. Thanks so much. This is John Robinson from the Prevention Education Program at Child and Family Focus, signing off. And we have the warm line number here as well if you want to, get more information about our services. Thanks.